everyone, welcome to Belle's Books. I'm Carly and I am not filming from my desk today because I'm doing a try a chapter tag. So this is going to be a bit like a vlog. I'm in my living room. I'm about to start reading the books that I have from the Women's Prize for Non-Fiction. So I had a bunch of holds come in at the library. They are stacked up on my lap here, as is Dodger, who you can't see, he's just out of shot, but he is also stacked up on my lap. So I'm gonna read the first chapters of all of these books that I've got to decide which one I want to carry on with. So I've got Tracker by Alexis Wright. I have got Embers of the Hands by Eleanor Barraclough. I have Sister-in-Law by Harriet Wistrich. It's quite heavy. I have The Peepshow by Summerscale, and I have Wild Thing by Prideaux, the biography of Paul Gauguin. So I think I'm gonna start. Which one am I going to start with? I'm going to start with the biography of Paul Gauguin. I'm very intrigued by this. Also, very excited that there are colour plates in here of his paintings, which I very much enjoy. So I'm going to start reading this, and what I will do is check in with you after I have read each of the first chapters, and then I will do a summary of which one I'm going to carry on with. So I'm very excited about this. Dodger is also very excited about this. You just can't tell from his face. I will put in some footage of Dodger. I have my cup of tea in my ginormous mug. So let's get on with some reading, and I'll check back in with you in a bit. Hi, okay, so I have read now the first chapter of Wild Thing, A Life of Paul Gauguin by Prideaux. I'm in two minds about this. I'm finding it super interesting. The first chapter is about his very early years growing up in a very privileged household in Peru. And it's about their life there, and it's also about his mother and his grandmother, who I am finding very interesting. I would very much like to know more about those people. His grandmother was this, like, a badass, amazing socialist feminist by all accounts. Apparently she has a statue in France. I think it's France. And she was just like advocating for like workers' rights and all of this, and like she campaigned against child prostitution in London. It was like she did so much. I kind of want to read more about her. So there's some really interesting background to his, like, in terms of his family. I'm finding the writing style a little bit, not difficult, but there are points where I'm having to like reread sentences because it's a little bit like it doesn't flow very well, I don't feel. And there are some points which I feel are a bit laboured, like she's making a point that he grew up, his family wealth came from slavery, but she keeps saying this came from slavery and he had slaves and there were slaves and there were slaves. I'm like, I get it. I get what you're saying. So I feel like some points are a bit like overdone, and other times sentences are just a bit like stilted, and I'm like, what? Why did you say that? So I'm not sold on the writing style at the moment. I am finding his family history super interesting. So I think I will carry on with this. Also very much enjoying the colour plates. Sorry for the noise in the background. Dan is getting our dinner ready. Very much enjoying the colour plates in here, where you can see examples of his work and things that have influenced him. And the first chapter also talks about the way that the kind of Peruvian culture and mythology and folklore has fed into his later art style, which is interesting. So yeah, I enjoyed that. But I'm going to put this aside now, and then I'm going to go have my dinner, and I will check in with you again tomorrow when I read a chapter from one of the other books. Hi, it is now the next day, it's Sunday, and I have read the first very small chapter of Embers of the Hands by Eleanor Barraclough. So the first chapter, it's only very short, it's called Kindling. It's the prologue, and I really enjoyed the writing style. It feels like she's trying to cultivate this narrative thread where she's looking at history in a different way, which I very much enjoy. So she's talking about how we traditionally think of history as periodized and in certain like compartments. So Iron Age, Bronze Age, Vikings, and they are time bound and time limited, and set apart from one another. And what she's doing in this opening chapter is talking about history using the analogy of a river, which I really like. So she's talking about it as a kind of meandering body of water that intermingles and intermixes with various different periods, and that it's not possible to think about history as compartments that are contained, that don't affect one another. And I really think that that is very important and a great way to kind of reappraise history. So I'm very much on board with the narrative style. I like her writing. It feels like she's trying to write it in like a novel form, so it's very accessible, it's easy to read, and yeah, I was immediately pulled in by her tone and her writing, so really enjoyed that. The prologue is a bit of a broad sweep of history in terms of the way that we think of it. So she's talking about all of those stages, particularly when it comes to the Vikings, and she's talking about geographical locations and the way that people used to travel about. So the other thing I really liked was the way that she talked about migration, in the way that in kind of early human development we were not just fixed in one place, we were constantly moving and going all about the place. So she's talking about how that migration was affected by like empire. So she's talking about the Roman Empire and borders and that kind of thing. So that's something I'm really interested in, as a way that we kind of look back at history and just reappraise it. So very much enjoyed that. I did start to read the introduction. I felt like I could have been pulled in a bit more. Haven't got to the nitty gritty of the artifacts and the people yet. That's the bit I'm really intrigued by. So I'm hoping that will come very soon, because this felt like a broad kind of sweep, or like an overview of what she was going to be talking about as by way of introduction. So I have high hopes for this. I feel like I do want to continue with it. On the other hand, I also read the first chapter of Tracker by Alexis Wright. This was not so good for me. So it was the introduction, and how much was about, I don't know, what was it? 26 pages. So I read the intro, and so Alexis Wright is talking about her relationship with Tracker, the person she's writing about, and the way that he was seen by all of the people that knew him, the things that he did, and it's very much like he is very lauded in this context. Like, he was an amazing person. He really tried to do his best for Aboriginal people, and particularly when it comes to land rights. The thing was, I feel like I don't know enough about Australian history, Aboriginal history, all of that context. I felt like there were so many things that she mentioned to do with land rights and certain like government acts, the history of colonialism in Australia specifically, that I don't understand. And there were things I felt like it just went over my head. So yeah, I just feel like I'm missing a lot of context for this to make sense to me. Then I started to read into the first, I read the first chapter, I think, which is from, did I? I read the first chapter, which is from Tracker Tillmouth's perspective. Now, I think this is based on a memoir that, she said he didn't write stuff, but it's got his name at the top. So it's either things that he said that's been recorded, or something that he's written. And I just found it too meandering. I felt like I have this relative, right? And she'll start a story and it'll go off on 1,000 tangents without any indication that a tangent has been made. And I find it really hard to keep up. And I felt like that was happening with this chapter. Like, you're starting off with this story, and then it switches and it goes about this, and then it turns this way, and then it talks about this. And I'm just like, what? And I get that's the way that this guy lived his life and talked, and that was who he was. Again, there was I felt like I was just missing a lot of context. Things didn't make much sense to me. Reference points that I didn't get. And yeah, I don't think this is going to be for me. I really struggled with it. So I think I'm going to take this back to the library and let someone else try and read it, because yeah, I did really want to give this a go, but I just feel like what I actually need is something that is about the history of Australia and kind of like a broader overview, which is very much in contrary to what I was saying about things that the history I like, in terms of I like a close look at how people are affected by history, as in the Vikings book. Yes, please. But with this, I just felt like I'm missing too much detail, and I'm not going to get the benefit of reading this because a lot of it's just going over my head. So if you have any recommendations for Australian history, particularly when it comes to colonialism and the Aboriginal fight for getting land back, I would very much like to read those kind of books, but I don't know if this is going to be it. Okay, I'm going out in a minute. I'm going to meet some friends to have a catch up and hopefully learn some more crochet because I've just started crocheting. Like I'll show you what I've done. This is the extent of my crochet skills. This is all I've been able to crochet. And I'm stuck because I've got to the end of my row. I don't know how to carry on. So hopefully my friend is going to be able to teach me how to carry on this tiny bit of crocheting that I've done. And because it's so small, the only thing I can think that it's going to turn into is a blanket for Dodger. So we shall see how that goes. So I'm going out for a few hours, and then hopefully this evening when I get back, I will be able to start Sister-in-Law, which I'm very much looking forward to. I will let you know how I get on with that after I've read it. Oh, hello. I'm doing a quick check-in. It's now several days later. I've had an absolute week of it. Got some family stuff going on, which has been intense, and haven't been able to read because, yeah, my brain has been otherwise preoccupied. It is now Friday. I had the day off work. I'm just about to head out into town to run some errands. You may be able to hear my wind chimes. They're going crazy because it's very blustery outside. I don't know what's going on with my hair. This is also a mess. But this morning I read the first chapter of The Peepshow, The Murders at 10 Rillington Place by Kate Summerscale. Oh my gosh, I am hooked. So I read the preface and the first chapter. The preface is written very much in the style of a novel, so it's kind of sets the scene of this sex worker is approached by a man who tries to get her to go back to his house, and he keeps like saying, will you come back to my house, will you come to, and then he's like asking about her house and if there's going to be people around. Anyway, so this is only like a couple of pages long, and then he doesn't come back, and then the next day she sees his photo in the News of the World. So you obviously know he is the guy that has done the murdering. The first chapter is then about the discovery of the bodies in his flat, in his house. And I really like the writing style in here. I'm finding the narrative very compelling. I like the way that she's writing it. It is very conversational. It's very much in the style of a novel. It's pulling you along. And the first chapter is very much about one of the reporters that reported on this this crime. So we get a lot of detail about this reporter called Harry Proctor, who I keep wanting to say Harry Potter. Harry Proctor was one of the journalists that covered it. So you get a lot of story about him, and I was like, where is this going? Why are we getting so much detail about this guy? But it's also giving you information about the way that the newspapers functioned, a bit of social history about that time. So this was the 50s, early 50s. So you're getting some kind of interesting social context about that time, particularly about how reporters and newspapers and that whole business worked. And there's also a little bit of background about the house that this killer was living in and the other people that lived there. She's also talking about this in terms of the racism that was happening at that time, because the building was owned by a West Indian man, and he let out a lot of the flats to people from the West Indies because they couldn't get accommodation anywhere else. There was that there were like lots of signs at the time saying like only British only or only English people were allowed to apply for accommodation, which is obviously quite shocking and horrible. So a lot of the residents in there were from the West Indies, and she's talking about the discrimination they face. So there's kind of a lot of social history happening, which I am very much here for. It is reminding me a lot of The Five by Hallie Rubenhold, which I kind of hoped it would do. So yeah, it's really pulled me in very quickly, and out of all of the books that I've read so far, this is the one that I am desperate to carry on with. I think that's also partially because the way she's writing it, again, I don't tend to consume kind of true crime content. The only times that I have kind of encountered it is through Eliza Clark's novel Penance, which I think is just a stunning novel, and the way that that looks at true crime. And I think this book does have a lot to say about the consumption of true crime. So I am very keen to carry on reading this. The other book that I still have to read the first chapter of is Sister-in-Law, which I did start reading the other day, and then I got sidetracked and put it down. But that one also, I think, is going to be one that pulls me in. So I'm definitely going to carry on with this one. I'm walking into town at the moment now, and I wanted to listen to an audiobook. The audiobook I'm listening to is The Curfew by T.M. Logan. It was recommended by Jen Campbell, and I'm really enjoying that. But because I've gone so overboard with my reserves, you know how in the last clip I said I'd maxed out my fines on my library? I work for the library, and I didn't renew my books, so I have now got a whole host of new fines. My current charges on my library account are £16, which is ridiculous. Oh my gosh. But because of that, I've now been locked out of BorrowBox and Libby and all of my audiobook apps. Oh, why have I done this to myself? So I'm going to go into the library and ask my colleagues to like sort out my account to bring it back down under £10 so that I can listen to my audiobook. Such a state. Anyway, that's where I am. I will update you when I've read the chapter of Sister-in-Law. Also, I have recently got a copy of Raising Hair by Chloe Dalton, because I've bought that book. So I don't know whether I'll put that into this vlog, but I'll see how I get on with Sister-in-Law, and I will update you, hopefully, when my library account is unlocked. Hi everyone, I am back to do my final check-in of this video. I have read the first chapter of Sister-in-Law by Harriet Wistrich. Oh, this is going to be a hard read, I think. But I am going to carry on with it. Massive trigger warnings in this book for pretty much everything. So Harriet Wistrich is talking about her career as a lawyer. The first chapter was about how she changed from being a feminist campaigner to a lawyer, fighting the corner of women who were convicted for murdering their partners that had perpetuated domestic abuse on them. So there is quite a bit of detail about that. So I mean, just if you're going into this, be very aware that there are some detailed descriptions of abuse in this. It's not an easy read, and I found it really compelling. The narrative style is actually very accessible, so it's easy to read. She talks about some legal terms, and the law is something I know nothing about, so I'm very interested in that. And she's talking about the way that men who are convicted of violence against women get lighter sentences, and there are things that kind of get them easier sentences. Like there was cases where a man killed his wife, and there was what's it called? Not justification, but the legal term that was used was like provocation. He was provoked into killing his wife, and even the judge said something like, oh well, she would have tried the patience of a saint. So like she's talking about the deep-rooted sexism and misogyny within the legal system at large, looking at specific cases, and taking those cases where men got leaner sentences and trying to use that legal term or justification like for these women, because all these women were having very heavy sentences for murdering abusive partners after they had sustained abuse for a very long time. So I'm finding that interesting, the way that they can highlight that injustice there. But like I say, it's not an easy read. I am very intrigued though. I do want to carry on with this. Very interested in like her development from a campaigner, from a feminist activist to a lawyer, and the activism that was around. This is like early 90s. The book starts talking about a particular case in the early 90s. So yeah, I am going to carry on with it. Don't think it's going to be easy, but I think it's a very important read. So, of the ones that I have read the first chapters of, I've obviously already taken Tracker back to the library because that was a no from me. But out of these 4, the ones that I'm going to continue with are Sister-in-Law and The Peepshow. I don't know whether I might take Wild Thing back. Also, I've heard some stuff about Paul Gauguin that I didn't know beforehand. So he apparently has a massive reputation for spreading syphilis and marrying very underage girls. I did not know that. And one of the curious things that this book starts with is like new medical evidence that analysed his teeth to check for syphilis. Apparently that's the thing. And she makes an assertion, Sue Prideaux, in this book, that he did not have syphilis. So that is a false narrative that has been spun about him. So I'm kind of intrigued as to see, like, for a guy that's had such a bad reputation, and is like the antithesis of a good guy, why has she chosen to write a biography about this man, and what new light can she shed on his life? So I'm kind of intrigued about that still. Also, I do want to carry on with this, but I'm just, I've got too many books out of the library at the moment. Can I read them all by the time I've got to take them back? Probably not. So this is kind of third in line, and then I'm going to go Wild Thing. In the meantime, I've also got a copy of Raising Hair by Chloe Dalton, which is my copy, so that's great. I can read that later. Very much looking forward to that. And I now have Bootlin by Jenny Fagan. I think a memoir is... I think this is also going to be difficult because it's about her life growing up in care. And interestingly, I think books that can have conversations with each other, like just reading the first 2 chapters of these 2 books, there's a lot thematically that speaks to the same idea of like sexism, misogyny, deep-rooted systemically, in the law. That's Dodger chirruping, by the way, because he thinks it's his dinner time. Dodger, it is not your dinner time. It is 20 to 4 and his dinner time is at 5. But he's still very angry about it. Anyway, yeah, so I think reading these 2 would be very interesting. Thematically, they're linked. And I think this might be the case also. Then I have this beast, The Eagle and the Heart, Tragedy of Richard II. Now, history is not it's not something I read often. It's huge, it's really heavy, but it does have some beautiful colour plates in it. And I'm pleased to say that the text is a nice large font, so I'm going to give this a go. I think what I will do is another video of reading the first chapters, maybe of these 3, because I enjoyed this very much. And I think it's such a good way to, when you've got a massive long list of like 16 books and you don't know which ones you want to read, reading the first chapter is a very nice way to go, okay, I enjoy this writing style, I'm invested in this topic, I want to carry on. So I like that very much. Dodger likes it less so. So I'm going to carry on reading now. Yes, and soon I will have to give Dodger his dinner very early because I don't think this chirping is going to stop anytime soon. So I will make another video very soon doing first chapters of the other books. Let me know how you're getting on, please, down below in the comments. Tell me if you have read any of the long listed books, if you're going to pick any up, what you think about it. I've already had some comments on my other video. Thank you very much. Do keep them coming. I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on the long list. And already somebody has put the Nana Cherry book back on my list, which I'd completely written off because I was like, no, that's not for me. I don't really want to read that. But that's why I love prize lists, right? Because you pick up books that you wouldn't ordinarily pick up. So yes, the Nana Cherry book is back on my list. When I'll get around to reading it, who knows? But I shall see you very soon in another video. Take care, everybody, and I'll speak to you soon.